podcast. Dr. M.S. Vasu also served ICRISAT, and he has also held the positions like Executive Director, Arvara Biotech in New Delhi, and also the Vice President of Plant Research and Development. Now, sir, I would like to start the session. Now, session is up to you, sir. In start.
Thanks for introducing me with the audience, and welcome to my students group. It's a very pleasant moment for me, at least, to talk before you. The issue is sustainable agriculture development in India and what are the challenges. So the subject itself, quite challenging, particularly when agriculture is challenging in this country. Challenging in the sense we are 135 crore people, and we have the responsibility to feed them, make them well, and keep them healthy. So all my agricultural upcoming graduates, postgraduates, join as a panelist. Okay, so
so please unmute yourself.
is it okay?
Yes, sir. Now it's okay, sir.
Okay, sorry. I mean,
It's okay, sir.
I don't have laptop. I'm just doing it from my iPhone in a hotel room. I'm on travel, but still, it's a pleasure to stand before the students and participate in this very important topic.
Yes, sir.
So,
Yes,
sustainability in agriculture, the development issues and challenges. Actually, sustainability is it refers to equilibrium between demand and supply of agricultural produce. What is in broad sense in agriculture sustainability? And agriculture, it's a largest private sector participation, the farmers. I mean, if you took it as a sector, probably it is the largest private sector in the country, which is held by the farmers. So there are two unique things in agriculture in India. And as I said, that world's second largest populous country, 135 crores living in India, and maybe 70% are in the particularly rural villages, and agriculture is the main livelihood. So under that situation, sustainability is the most important, and that sustainable development in agriculture sector, what is primarily aiming is productivity of agricultural produce, crops, what we are growing, efficiency of that particular crop, where it is being grown, and level of employment, those who are engaged in agriculture. So that all contributes to the sustainability. And how that sustainability comes particularly with the judicious use of natural resources, their preservation, and kind of mechanism that reduce the kind of soil degradation, the environmental pollutions, and all kind of things, making our living also challenge free. So there are risks in agriculture, particularly damaging the soil, atmosphere, climates, and at the same time producing food for all. So there remain the challenges, and we need to have a meticulous plan to make a balance of production and sustainability. So this is the way forward. Let us understand, particularly for the students, what I'm taking, understand what are the agri sector. What is agriculture sector? So I know you are in agriculture stream, you know what is agriculture, but I'm trying to give you an encompass of the agriculture sector in totality, in few words, because it's a Mahabharata. And if you ask me definition of Mahabharata in 2 lines, so that's the thing I'm trying to do. What is agriculture in India and understanding the agri sector? Actually, agriculture is one of the most prominent sector, if you look into that, in Indian economy. Agriculture itself accounts about 27% of the GDP and contribute 21% of the total exports in this country. So you can imagine how much agriculture is contributing to the gross domestic products and particularly from the export earnings. Now, in India, 75% people, as I said, living in villages, particularly in the rural area, and they depends on agriculture. And 43% of the India geographical area is used for agriculture activity. So you can imagine that India's total size and its 43% area is cultivable under agriculture, and we are producing about 220 million tons of food annually to, provide food for all. And we are now complacent in food production, means country is having enormous food stock. No one should go hungry with that kind of food. But when you produce that much of food every year to feed the billions of people, what happens? You are unnecessarily tapping huge natural resources to support the crop and produce food. And that's the question. It is hampering sustainability. I will slowly come to that. What are the challenges in sustainability and how long we can really do that by producing, say, 220 million tons of food grains to feed this much billion, 138 crore people. And that too, population growth is still there. Population is increasing, and at the same time,
Sir, excuse me, sir. So sorry for interruption, but I would like to ask you that do you have any material for like PPT? So you share with me, I'll share from here.
You are talking about the PowerPoint presentation.
Anything materials or anything, either it is PDF, either
Which material? Hello.
So any material from where you are presenting this. Am I audible, sir?
No, I have to.
Yes,
no,
sir. Yes, sir.
I am presenting only from my iPhone, and yes, I have no presentation slides at the moment because laptop is lost. So that I will be sending my PowerPoint.
Is it on your mail ID? Then you can forward that to me.
Pardon?
So is it that PPT is on your mail ID? Then you can forward that to
me.
No,
it is not there in my mobile. It is not there. But once I go back, I will be sending it to you for making use for the students or so. Just after that, after the meeting, I am returning home, and from there I'll be sending.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. So it's my request to all attendees.
I know there will be a little inconvenience, but it's a just.
Okay, sir. It's okay, sir. All
just
attendees,
a kind of discussion what I'm trying to have with the students.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
You just continue.
Okay. So again, coming back to that, our total land area trying to give you an agricultural scenario so that we understand the challenges and where the sustainability question comes. So it depends on the available natural and human resources, as you know. And fortunately, India is blessed with large agroclimates, particularly with the fertile soils and irrigation water. It's a very suitable throughout the year for growing any kind of crops. And that's the reason India has become the world's largest producer of numerous commodities. We have hundreds of crops grown annually over different seasons in different states. It's not that one crop uniformly grown throughout the country, unlike in European and other countries, but we have diversified crops, we have diversified agroclimatic areas, and we have diversified technology so that we produce large gamut of crops like from spices, cereals, legumes, oilseeds, pulses. Camera, you have to give me confidence bit. Are you able to listen? Your students are able to.
We are able
Okay.
to listen you, sir, but
Okay, okay.
yes, sir. Yes.
So what I'm trying to say, India is unique in the sense we have
But sir,
large number
like
of
this lecture is going to be recorded, so you have to on your camera.
camera, start video camera. This one?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's fine
Okay.
now. It's fine.
So, okay. So India, as you know, we are, an excellent country in the world where large number of crops are grown by 75% of the, farmers living in rural areas, and climates are unique. Round the year, you can have a diverse climate, right from Himachal Pradesh to Kerala. You will have different temperature, different soils, different agroclimatic situation. And that's the reason India is able to grow large number of crops, unlike other European countries or America, Australia or US. So we have diversified crop. Similarly, we have diversified challenges also, particularly in terms of sustainability. Now, you know what is happening in India. We are the world's number one in many crops, particularly if I say the number one in the crops, that is probably right from mango, coconut, banana, ginger, turmeric, cashew nut, pulses, in some pulses, of course, soybean, black pepper. We are world's largest producer in these crops. Similarly, we are the second largest, particularly in groundnut, cotton, fruits and vegetables. So you can imagine that what is the strength of India in agriculture. But we have also certain points of, disadvantages in the sense, because our mostly 58% area, or maybe close to 60% area, what we cultivate is under rainfed. And apart from rainfed, there will be flood, there will be, severe pests and diseases, particularly say the locust, which also caused very, havoc recently. So that kind of biotic, abiotic factors are tremendous on which we have no control, or our farmers do not have access to the irrigation to make the crop, viable in the sense, have a better yield and see that the crop is profitable to them. Sometimes investment, what they make in agriculture, they cannot reap the harvest to that extent. And that's the reason over time farmers are entangled with the debt. So most of the farmers are poor, economically backward farmers. They do not have the capacity to spend much. So in this process over years, so agriculture had become, just a sustainable, subsistence agriculture instead of sustainable. So how to make it sustainable? Because without sustainable agriculture may not stand long. And again, there will be a food crisis. So to make the agriculture sustainable, there are a lot of technological innovations, technological adoption is required, and that is being transferred to the farmers by agricultural universities, by say agricultural institutions, research institution in the country. And we have hundreds of thousands of people working in that particular area. If you take about say 50 agricultural universities, Indian Council of Agricultural Research, they are in crop-based institution. So hundreds and thousands of scientists are supporting agriculture, particularly to make them sustainable. And major constraints in this country, particularly the erratic rainfall because of the climate change, sometimes high temperature also causing problem. And we have to really seal them so that if you insulate them, the high temperature, moisture stress, and of course, for flood, you do not have much, technology to control, but you have to have flood tolerant variety where stagnation of water is for some time. So this kind of things are, these are impairing the sustainability. Now, factors, what are the key factors for sustainable agricultural development? If you kindly note that one, that the key factors for sustainable agricultural development, there are three broad types, if I could see. And these three broad types are particularly the traditional farming system, what farmers are following, and then modern farming system, what the big farmers are applying, and and the general farmers, I mean, the farming system which the resource poor farmers are adopting. So three broad categories of sustainable agricultural development that is giving certain challenges, and those types we have to understand. And ultimately that comes to, if you boil down to those kind of agricultural system, that will have the impact of the ecology, particularly the ecological sustainability. What I mean, particularly under ecological sustainability, it is mostly the misuse of resources, reducing soil fertility, and causing the soil erosion and contributing ultimately to the climate changes. So until and unless we look into that aspects, particularly not misusing the natural resources what you do have. Natural resources means you have fertile soil, you have irrigation water, you have nutritionally adequate soils available in your country, or with the farmers. So those things have to be utilized judiciously so that we can have sustainability starting from the ecological situation. So number one is ecological sustainability is important. Then of course down the line will be the soil fertility, which causes lot of removal of nutrition after every crop you grow. So those things are to be taken care of. If you are continuously growing, say, sugarcane, or continuously growing high fertilized required crops, then of course there will be very serious problem of soil fertility, and over a period of time there will be declining yields. So that will certainly contribute to the sustainability factors, and ultimately our agriculture may not be sustainable. So for that you need to maintain soil fertility, at the same time soil water use. So indiscriminate use of irrigation water. So when you are growing paddy, if you are giving enormous amount of water to the crop every say week or so, because rice is water demanding crop. If you are growing sugarcane, which also requires lot of water, particularly thousands of liters to produce 1 kilo sugar, under that situation your water resources will be also be limited, and ultimately we will not be moving ahead to the sustainability, maintaining sustainability for high water demanding crops. So we need to take care of our water and soil to make agricultural productivity sustainable. And if agricultural productivity is sustainable, and whatever you invest, you have a reasonable amount of income. So ultimately agriculture becomes sustainable. And particularly we have seen that our land use pattern is really not that very dynamic. Why I am saying land use pattern is not dynamic? It is in the sense we are growing one type of crop every time. Say if you look at Punjab, say for example, because you are close to that. So it is rice and wheat continuously over decades being grown. So until and unless there is crop diversification in your agricultural system, so sustainability is a big question mark. We cannot really maintain sustainability, though we can achieve sustainability maybe for a year or so by putting all our technology, spending money and doing everything. But that will not be sustainable in the long run. So this is a huge challenge. We must have a land use planning, crop diversification planning, and at the same time, the whatever climate resilient varieties, less water demanding varieties are coming. So going for the new climate resilient varieties, making agriculture much more sustainable. And ultimately, over these land, soil, and water and ecology, there is another challenge. Your climate change challenge is coming, rise of temperature, and you can see that what kind of flood is coming, what kind of temperature is rising, and what kind of pests are coming, which were not known in 10 years ago or so. So now we are facing all kind of challenges along with the climate change, and this is the reason maintaining agricultural sustainability is an emerging problem. And in India, which is an agricultural country, if agricultural sustainability is not maintained, I mean, so there will be hunger, poverty is already there, and people may not get food, in future. So it's a huge task that we maintain that kind of sustainability. And sustainability, it comes from the economic sustainability. If you took up, I talked about agricultural sustainability, but sustainability trickle down to your economic sustainability. That economic sustainability may be stakeholders associated with the agriculture. If I am a farmer, I have my investment in agriculture. If I'm a consumer, I am investing on the food grains. And ultimately, if those things are not, healthy or not very conducive for health or not adequately what is required is available, so that becomes a factor of economic sustainability. And similarly, that leads to the social sustainability in the whole process. So these are the 5-6 factors revolving with the agricultural sustainability. And if I repeat once again, that is probably your ecological sustainability is number one. Then comes to the ecological sustainability, it comes to the soil's fertility, then water, then biodiversity, means a crop biodiversity, and after all, which is affecting our health and pollution, the indiscriminate use of pesticides, fertilizer, which comes into the your food system, particularly through water, residue pesticides, and until and unless this is crop diversification comes. So land use pattern is also a matter of sustainability, and that all contributes to the climate sustainability, which is because sometimes with intensive agriculture, we are producing greenhouse gases, and at the same time, we are also producing rice, that methane gases. So ultimately, we are polluting our environments. And even if you are not polluting environments through your methane or through, greenhouse gases, but at the end of the, cropping season, maybe sometimes our farmers are burning their crop residues that are directly polluting the environment and the air quality, which is again becomes the sustainability. It's a social sustainability. So sustainability in agriculture cannot be viewed in isolation. It has to be viewed in the entire gamut of perspectives, right from soil, water, field, crops to economic sustainability, social sustainability, health sustainability, and after all, the overall sustainability of the country's growth. Since agriculture is contributing to 27% of the GDP, so you can imagine what kind of sustainability is required in agriculture. And that's the reason the new generation, the youngsters coming in agriculture, they are taking huge risk of sustainability on their shoulder. So they need to understand agriculture bit by bit, crop by crop, and particularly factors by factors. And particularly time has come that integrated farming system models means in a piece of land, they must have the kind of crops, maybe intercrops, maybe relay crops, and composite crops, mixed crops to, mitigate the risk factors. Risk factors out of drought, risk factors out of flood, risk factors out of pest, out of diseases. If you are having a sole crop and climate is so rapidly changing, that will never allow to go for sustainability. So you have to create your own equation, formula, and the technology, how you can harvest per unit area, the maybe several crops, and make them really sustainable under challenging environments. For example, I am growing, say, soybean. It's a huge crop of India in about 10 to 12 million, 13 million hectares, and that too confined in Madhya Pradesh and to some other states. So if my students, they are listening, so suppose we have a soybean as a sole crop in 13 or 14 million hectares, and if there is any kind of climate change or maybe severe drought or the severe pest affecting the entire crop, then there should be kind of mixed crop or intercrop which can really make them sustainable. Any problem, ma'am?
No, sir.
Not
Not
a-
at all. No, sir. It's
Oh,
okay.
okay. So I'm talking about the sustainability from, I mean, one ecoregion to the other ecoregion. If Punjab is there, which is characterized by, say, low temperature during the winter, to Kerala state, where temperature never causes a problem. So under that kind of diverse ecological situation, we should have our own planning to make crop production sustainable. And it's a all diversified crops has to be grown in a particular cropping system. And monocropping may not help always. We have to have mixed cropping, relay cropping, or intercropping system with the change of thing. And that will be the key factors for your augmenting climate change and bringing sustainability in agriculture, which is seriously under threat. And it is not only threat due to environment, due to aberrant weather, or due to climate, pests and diseases, again threat due to policy. So there is a message for policymakers also that if agriculture has to be addressed properly, sustainability risks are to be reduced. So planning also has to be made. If you say, for example, I'm telling, we are producing, say, 220 to 30 million tons of rice. And suppose that rice is not required immediately, to that extent, what we are doing, we are storing on the roadside, because we do not have scientific granaries to store cereals scientifically, so that there is no mold formation, there is no damage due to rats, rodents, and all those things. And that food grain remains as a food, because whatever it produces may not be the food. If it is highly loaded with aflatoxins, pesticide residues, and unfit for human consumption, they are not food, but they could be grain. So what I'm telling, so there should be planning at the policymakers level to make agriculture produce sustainable, in the sense produce what is required. That is a balanced kind of production system. We should have diversified production in the same land, maybe rice, then maize can come, sugarcane can come, and maybe some kind of mixed crop can come, and giving all kind of crops to be grown, necessarily minimizing the risk factors. Now, agriculture is not only the crop. One has to maintain, keep in mind, when I talk about agriculture, or anyone talks about agriculture, that agriculture is your horticulture, fruits, vegetable, animal sciences, dairy, poultry, piggery, everything comes together. That's the agriculture. So if you simply look at the crop and then produce and then store it or supply as a food, that is not the sustainability. Particularly sustainability in the nutrition, sustainability in the food system, and to eliminate kind of poverty, hunger, and malnutrition. So the agricultural growth has to be in totality, taking all kind of crops, animals, and fisheries, dairy together. So for that also, there are a lot of technologies available and lot of scope available to bring those things, considering with the agriculture, and at the same time, working for their sustainability. What I'm talking, suppose the milk, if you have 2 cows and you are getting 10 liters milk, and that 10 liters maybe next year it could be 1 liter or 0. So how you augment that continuous milk production, their supply, for maintaining health of 138 crore people. So every stage there are sustainability issues, and those sustainability issues along again is linked with agriculture, because when you are talking about the animal rearing, you have to think of their feed, and that feed comes from agricultural waste, and that gives the sustainability. So it's a holistic chain. Your dairy, milk, poultry, piggery, goatery, and agriculture. So sustainability has to be, thought of in the entire gamut of perspective, and And that kind of sustainability will be the truly sustainable. Now, sustainable, suppose you are sustainable in agricultural production and particularly whatever we consume every day, all are available. But are you really going to be sustainable economically? No, because the 70% farmers, as I'm telling, those people, rural people, they are economically poor, and really they are not sustainable economically. And for them, there is need to have sustainable economic development. And again, it has to be through agricultural processes. How should we done that? Now see, agriculture in the rural India, it is after harvesting grains, you throw most of the biological products, economical products, the grain you are taking, but biological products are thrown away. Say, for example, banana. I mean, Tamil Nadu is the world's, India's largest state. And again, India is the world's largest producer of banana. But after taking the fruits, 90% of the vegetative portion, trunk, we, throw away. And that is the issue where sustainability, economic sustainability, if we are to bring, that has to be utilized. Agricultural wastes are to be utilized for economic development, particularly in the rural India. So there are technologies how best we can make use of agricultural waste to make value-added products. And I can here tell you for my students, say, suppose banana trunk what is usually left out, they can give you 3 to 4 products. They can give fiber, they can give your nutrition, plant nutrition, particularly liquid nutrition, iron and other things, calcium they have. And at the same time, you can have a candy out of the meristem, lot of iron, which can be even distributed to the school children during the midday meal in huge area and village areas where children suffer from malnutrition. So if one single waste can give that much 3 or 4 products, that policymakers must think, or utilization of those agricultural waste must be made to make agriculture sustainable. So sustainable in terms of increasing production is not the sustainability. And even conserving your moisture, water, conserving your land is not the sustainability. Sustainability in agriculture has to be in a very holistic form. Now, there are also economic sustainability, particularly at the village level, is not to produce just food, grains or cereals or fruits and vegetables and sell it to the market. You have enormous youth, particularly at the village level. So we can have self-help group formation, give them some kind of training on value addition, product diversification at the village level. That will add economic sustainability. So until and unless you have full utilization of your agri-produce for diversified uses, though sustainability really may not come. And if you keep your rural population under unemployment, so never economic development will be taking place. And that is the root cause for taking India, particularly in terms of unsustainability on health, on agriculture, on food, and particularly then in natural resources. Your microphone is unmuted, Kiola.
Yes, sir. Is there any?
I think video. Now can I have almost, this is the message I wanted to convey. So it is, and the more challenging is happening. What is happening? 3 things: urbanization, rapid urbanization, I should say. The agricultural lands are being converted for your. No, I am not getting that thing. Anyway, just I'm concluding it. Urbanization process is really a serious challenges in making agriculture sustainable, followed by climate change, and particularly the policies, which is also creating problem, particularly the crops, what farmers are selecting year after year for easy marketing. Now, marketing, until and unless marketing is makes dynamic, so it will be all because of the MSP driven agriculture, and MSP driven agriculture, particularly say in cereals, rice, wheat, where easy sale is there, farmers are able to sell under MSP, unlike your pulses, oil seeds, and even groundnut and other crops, where MSP is not that, attractive to the farmers. So they may not come, may come not far that day when only cereals will be grown and no pulses and other crops will be grown. And pulses are very important to make the productive area fertile, because legume cereal rotation is a must to maintain agriculture and long-term sustainability, maybe for 100 years. Until and unless you do not have leguminous crops in your cropping system after rice, wheat, or sugarcane, so maintaining sustainability in cropping system, and it's absolutely difficult. So ultimately, message is we have to have cereal legume system to have, kind of sustainability in agriculture. Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Actually, video has stopped. Can I have some question from your audience so that that becomes much more, effective?
Definitely, sir. Sir, am I audible? Sir, am I audible to you? Yes, sir. Now you are here again.
Okay, so
Yes.
at least trying to get some questions, particularly students might be having many questions to ask.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Students also and participants also have some questions.
Please, please.
Yes, sir. Like Dr. Ranjana, she's asking about. She's also expert in genetics and plant breeding. So
Ah.
she wants to know that, sir, as plant breeders are doing the genetics manipulations in the crop plant, in a way they
Mhm.
are narrowing the genetic basis. So by doing these things, how the plant breeders actually contributing towards sustainable agriculture?
Okay, so hello,
Yes, sir.
Ranjana.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Ranjana, she was here, sir.
Actually,
Actually,
no, I am also basically plant breeder, but what I think that we are not narrowing the genetic base, rather we are broadening the genetic base by say introducing several genes in the system, maybe in the background of one single genotype, maybe as you know in earlier days there were I mean composites. So I mean bringing all kind of genes to say fight against your moisture stress, diseases, drought, pests. So there are lot of recombinants you are developing, and progenies are getting really diverse from the original parents. And in that way, I think we are broadening genetic base than narrowing it. This is number one. And now number two is there are several methods of breeding, particularly where you are incorporating a particular gene, where you are incorporating a block of genes, and that making the crop much more diversified under challenging environments. And we are only contributing to the, I mean, sustainability and rather broadening by broadening the genetic base, not narrowing down the genetic base. There are, of course, if I am to simply breed a disease-resistant variety, I mean, just putting a single gene and all the population, they are just able to manage a particular disease or pest, that is narrowing down. But if I am putting blocks of genes for different traits, I may be having a variety, having a drought tolerance, having disease resistance and multiple, I mean, characters. So that is happening. We are broadening indirectly, as I believe and feel.
okay, sir. She's agree with your answer. Thank you, sir. Someone is asking about, sir, how important is crop rotation for agriculture sustainability?
How important?
Crop rotation, sir. Crop rotation.
Oh, crop rotation is very much important because it's a very simple thing. Suppose if you are growing a particular crop, say rice after rice, I mean, all the seasons, say there are areas where rice is grown during rainy season, means Kharif season, again in the post-rainy season. Say, for example, Tamil Nadu, 3 rice varieties are grown in a single place of land covering entire year. So one single crop, if you grow for generations, naturally there will be a, I mean, drawback, particularly in the soil, because it requires a lot of, say, chemical fertilizer, say, for example, straightaway urea and PK, what you are constantly applying for rice, that will affect the soil health, and particularly the water requirements, as in rice, is very high. So it will deplete your water, underground water table, and at the same time it will turn your soil acidic, maybe some kind of nutrition will be limiting. That's why crop rotation is very much important. After rice, you have to have a leguminous crop. Even in the rice fallow, dispensing the second rice, you can go for your groundnut, go for chickpea, go for lentil. There are innumerable number of crops. So that could be grown to keep the soil health, I mean, unaffected, and particularly conserving the underground water table and preserving your natural resources. And one thing is there, God has given the this kind of rotation. Say after cereal, when you are going to grow leguminous crops, say for example groundnut or maybe your chickpea, their water requirements is just I mean 1/10 or less than that what your rice required. So you are saving water and you are saving urea fertilizer, because those leguminous crops, they do not require fertilizer. So ultimately it is improving not only soil health, it is improving the ecology, environment, and again giving some kind of financial support to farmers who are not required to buy chemical fertilizers or chemical pesticides, because once you break the crop cycle, rice, and bring second crop pulse, then their pest will be different. So same pest will not be attacking as it is attacking rice system. So after rice, if you dispense rice and grow another crop, so rice pest will automatically disappear. In that way, you are also saving chemicals and other things. So it is a must, particularly to improve fertility of the soil and to, keep intact your natural resources and make agriculture sustainable for the long run. And for example, sitting in Punjab, you might be looked into rice wheat. It has depleted your underground water table, because 1 kg rice requires 20,000 liters of water. Somebody say it is 25,000 liters of water it requires. So how much water you are adding to that, how much urea fertilizer you are adding in the soil, continuously growing rice for 1 generation. So probably now time has come. That's why policymakers in Punjab also thinking for crop diversification, crop rotation, and not only crop rotation, sometimes we can go for intercropping to minimize the risk. So there are 3 systems: crop rotation. After rice, there will be the second crop in the post-rainy season. Maybe during, say, Kharif season, 2 crops can be grown as an intercrop, minimize the risk, and even sometimes miscropping where risk is so high. So more you integrate a number of crops in a same piece of land, maybe in a sequence, maybe in the same time, it will add biodiversity to your crops and cropping system. It will add diversity. If breeders are reducing diversity, agronomic practices can give you much more diversity.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, Dr. Ranjana is asking again for your suggestion of some ideotype for pulses improvement under Punjab conditions.
My general crop ideotype, you see, we need to have first thing that a variety we should select, or we could have a genetic tailoring so that excessive vegetative growth, luxuriant growth is avoided. It will not put forth excess vegetative growth, only the desired level of vegetative growth. Second is leaf area. So there should not be, we should have a minimum leaf area. So if breeders, physiologists are there, they understand the leaf area ratio. We have to have optimum leaf area so that the mutual shedding is avoided. And again, we have to have a high partitioning efficient variety. Whatever photosynthetes are there, that will not be diverted towards vegetative growth, but diverted to the sink, means to the reproductive growth, so that more, your photosynthete comes to the sink and your economic yield, that harvest index improve. So we need to have a crop type which will be having less vegetative growth and at the same time having high reproductive growth, so that ultimately your harvest index become very high. So the same kind of principles what we are using in wheat, using in other crops, relatively applicable, but crop by crop again it is different. So it is a thick leaf, serration, hairy leaf. For all crops, very specific crop ideotypes are required, but major principle is partitioning. Let's partitioning move towards the sink to have a better harvest index, instead of allowing them to have excess vegetative growth and ultimately having a low economic yield.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. Sir, Dr. Shilpa, agronomy expert. She's asking about which approach is better for achieving sustainability with zero budget natural farming or organic farming.
Actually, that is adding new lifeline in agriculture. Now, zero budgeting and particularly organic cultivation, because you see, she might have already aware with the Green Revolution, introduction of Green Revolution in 1960s, the dwarf gene, high-yielding varieties, huge requirements of fertilizer, particularly the urea and phosphatic fertilizers. all imported fertilizers and equally chemicals and pesticides for their use. So we have really made our soil sick. Now again, going back to the traditional agriculture, when agriculture, the first seed was planted by the first man in this earth without fertilizer, without chemical pesticide, but they harvested for their survival, they harvested adequate grain to fill their belly. We are also now in a transitional period to move into that direction. But by now we have enormous technology. She is aware of that how we can go for biofertilizers, bio-inputs, biopesticides, those kind of things. So using those kind of biofertilizers, biopesticides, and rescuing the soil from its poor health by adding nitrogen, maybe introducing sometimes nitrogenous crops in rotation and improving soil health. So that is the most suitable approach and need of the time, and we must go toward in that direction. And at the same time, we should see that we should have such crops which may not be requiring excessive nitrogen, excessive pest, and we can manage it with a reasonable resources and reasonable doses to have a better yield. So there are many dryland crops which are not nutrient high inputs dependent. If you can manage it, say crop weed competition, just one example. If we reduce the crop weed competition in our traditional system of agriculture, it's a very difficult, particularly in organic system, to manage weed, where farmers are giving herbicides and all those things. So there we need to have some kind of practices to reduce the weed growth and crop weed competition. So you ultimately move towards better yield.
Okay,
So
sir.
ultimately, zero budgeting and traditional agriculture, organic, this is going to rescue Indian agriculture, where is already damaged a lot. And it's a time that we must find out efficient crops which can really judiciously draw nutrition, water, and give a sizable yield. And we should really go for that kind of crops, not very high feeding crops, particularly while choosing organic.
Okay, sir. Sir, there is one student who's asking about how can we pursue farmers or enforce farmers for practicing sustainable agriculture, as farmers believe that when they are going to add more and more fertilizer, then they are getting rid of it. So how we are going to enforce them and
No,
pursue them?
it is, madam, a misnomer in the sense, it is not that adding more fertilizer getting more yield. Sometimes there is skewed effect, negative effect is also there. So only thing basic need is, say, if for example, I'm talking about say human being, if someone is taking hormone for getting taller and he became tall 8 feet, but that doesn't mean that he will be healthy. So it has to be a balanced nutrition, NPK, micronutrients. Rather, I should say micronutrients are having much more value, particularly in augmenting your crop production. Nitrogen can put forth the growth, and phosphorus, potash, they will be required at a particular level as required by a crop. So what I feel, that if we look at the micronutrients which are having enormous bearing, particularly in a quality output, so we should have a balanced fertilizer. And that too, now there are a lot of anyway, some other calls are use of nano fertilizers are in use. Say in urea fertilizer, there is neem coating fertilizer, means slow release of fertilizer for a longer period. We should switch over to those technologies. We will be giving a particular dose. So there is blanket recommendation, 40, 20, 20, say 40 kg nitrogen. And that 40 kg nitrogen, suppose, because agronomists will understand, it's a blanket recommendation for a particular crop. Say maize, it is 60, 40, 40, a general recommendation. But 60 may not be required. Suppose your previous crop is potato, or very highly fertilized crop where you have given 120 kg nitrogen. So the next crop, there is no need to put any nitrogenous fertilizer, though recommendation is there either 60 kg or 40 kg or 120 kg. Because residual fertility level should be enough to sustain the crop, means to germinate and have initial growth, followed by supplementary nutrition, which is already there, and maybe balanced P and K. So farmers have to be taught in that direction, split dose, slow release, and particularly requirements based on your soil test value and depending on the previous crop, how much the previous crop got. So we can reduce, quite a sizable amount of money unnecessarily spent towards fertilizer, affecting crop as well as soil.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So there is one question from my side that what are the best options to improve the sustainable intensification of agriculture?
Now there are three things. Suppose agriculture, we have irrigated areas, we have minimal irrigation situation area where you can provide one or two, and you have totally rain dependent situation. Now strategies for three situations are altogether different. Say for now, coming to the irrigated areas, you are dealing with irrigated areas, say dealing with hybrid rice or hybrid maize or rice crop, because you have plenty of water. Now in that case, water budgeting is very important. It is not that the plant requires water every day to transpire. So if you understand the requirements of water, what it requires, even you can impose some kind of stress factors in that. Suppose I'm talking about irrigated groundnut, which gave 4 tons, 5 tons yield. We did it in Punjab, particularly PAU, Ludhiana, and in Gujarat, where groundnut is grown after harvest of potato during say spring or in the summer, giving 7-10 irrigations. But what we find, once you ensure germination and root development takes place in the seedling, say 10-leaf stage, say groundnut, and then if you withhold water for 20-22 days, not giving a single drop of water, that will trigger some kind of hormone, understanding that there will be no water and it's a loss of biological life. So plant automatically will trigger to get flowering, to leave their progenies. And after 21st days, 22nd days, if you will look that there will be a small flowering coming, because plant is probably trying to complete their life cycle. That time you release water. So at least you are using 30-40% water in between flowering to germination. And since there are many ways, say, of mulching, and maybe grass mulching, maybe polythene mulching, so that kind of technology, because if you have irrigated areas, you can provide mulching, bring number of crops there in the same area, high value, low value crops, even as an intercrop, some low value crops. If you are using some raised bed furrow method of planting, there those kind of crops could be put in the furrow, and you can have a benefit of both crops as well as the saving of water, and at the same time integrated pest management factors, because it is not necessarily to spray everything. Say suppose marigold we plant around the one row around the along the border, that will repel your sucking pest, particularly aphids, jesseeds, thrips, which are also the carrier of say the viral diseases, peanut bud necrosis or some other necrotic diseases, because thrips are the carriers of viral diseases. So in that process, this is for your irrigated areas. So balance sheet is totally different. Some, if you have minimal irrigation situation, budget your water just to give at a very critical stage, because for each crop, there are 2 or 3 most critical stages where missing one irrigation or giving one rain, missing one rain, your 50% yield will be reduced. So for that situation, for that crop, you only release that much water if you are having 2 irrigations water in your well. It is so low water table. So at least give at the 2 crucial juncture, so that your plant doesn't lose, your crop doesn't lose 50% yield. And now what is totally rain dependent, there you have to select a short duration crop, maybe 60 days, your say summer moong. Rajasthan farmers are taking sometimes summer moong with advent of one rain or one little irrigation, what they get. or sometimes in rice fallow situation, Odisha farmers are taking. And in 60 days, with the residual moisture, say in Ganganagar, Hanumangarh area, after harvest of your, irrigated crop, simply throwing some kind of summer moong for 60 days, you can have a good crop. So the strategy for different situation, three major situation will be different, and you can, save lot of inputs and at the same time get lot of crops also, which are very shorter duration and having some reasonable yield. Even if you get 500 kg per hectare moong just by throwing seed, so that will give you a benefit of maybe 1:1.25 in CBR, cross benefit ratio. So you have to plan according to your situation. Cut your cloth according to the your requirements of the code.
So, again, Dr. Shilpa is asking, organic farming is also leading to global warming. So, how we can justify that?
Organic farming leading to global warming?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I have to check that statement. Organic farming leading to global warming, or global warming causing damage to organic farming. You see, global warming, that I said, greenhouse gases, methane gases, there are many factors for global warming. And global warming with a rise of 1 degree centigrade temperature, so it will create havoc. What is creating, particularly temperature has shooted up to 45 degrees, say for Rajasthan, Gujarat, and long drought spell, no rains. So that kind of impacts are coming. But if I am growing a crop naturally without giving chemical pesticides, chemical fertilizers, how it can create, global warming, I have to, verify it, learn it bit. And if he can throw some light on that, why this question is coming in our mind. So global warming is a different phenomenon affecting agriculture, and that too, high input agriculture, high tech agriculture may be creating global warming. That is already established. But when my organic, a traditional farming, simply putting seed and maintaining it, that may not be really contributing towards the global warming. Anyway, I will look into that, and if I am wrong, I will correct myself.
It's okay, sir. Just agreed with your answer.
Okay.
One student is asking, how far India is using?
How far? How far?
Sir, how far is India using rice fish agricultural system?
Repeat me once. How far in agriculture system? Only that word I missed. How far?
Yes, sir. How far in India farmers are using rice and fish cultivation, fish culture in agriculture system?
Spice cultivation.
No, sir. Rice and fish.
Rice and fish.
Fish, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, rice and fish cultivation, you see, it's a traditional practice, particularly in the eastern region. If you talk about Assam, if you talk about, West Bengal, and where deep water paddies are grown in an extremely low-lying condition, where deep water paddies are there, and nowadays deep water paddy varieties are also there, the submergence 1 and 2 ERI varieties, where those kind of varieties are grown. They do farm fish. What they do usually, it is not that all the fishes are moving around the field, but a trench is there along the borders. Even water sometimes gets reduced or depletes, then in the, your channel in the border, water will be there, their fish survives. Otherwise, when field remains flooded, they can move around. So this is very common, particularly seasonal fishes. It is not that big fishes. Seasonal fishes of say maximum 50 to 100 grams weight, those kind of fishes are still being grown along with the rice. Rice say 135, 140 days. And in 145 days, you get, once you, put some seedlings, you get some seed. Fish seed, if you put, you will get the fish, maybe of 100 gram, 200 grams weight maximum. And those fish is rice and fish. And it is there even in in other countries also. We have seen Vietnam and other places, rice fish cultivation is a practice. They put fish seed there to get fish before harvesting of rice when it gets dry. And,
sir.
and there is another technique also, particularly if you visit Sundarban areas and other places, inside the farm, there will be a small pond also, where you can have large fishes. So some raised embankment, and all along the embanked area pond, there will be rice grown in the same waterlogged condition, smaller fish outside along with the paddy, and little bigger fish, say, which can grow up to 1 kilo, that is grown there. And sometimes, I mean, that pond field also gets submerged, but doesn't matter. Fish will be there within this, say, 2 hectare, 1 hectare field. And when waters reduce, fish enters into that pond also. So those practices are there in Sundarban areas.
Okay, sir. Sir, is there are disadvantages of this method?
Disadvantages of?
This fish and rice, sir.
No, after all, it's an economy, you can see. And if a farmers, I mean, get some additional, I mean, not some, it's a handsome income out of the fish, as it is very costly. And at the same time, poor farmers having small field, growing that one, and may not have money to buy fish. It is at least for the 3-4 months, they have their catch for nutritional security of the family. And it doesn't affect, because it survives on planktons and sometimes some algae, whatever is there, it does not directly eat away, I mean, the crop. Maybe some fish may bite 1 or 2 leaves, but it is absolutely compatible and you can say companion. The small fishes, these are all always beneficial, so they do not damage paddy crops.
Okay, sir. Sir, can you please suggest some climate resilient varieties or pulses?
Repeat me once, pulses, what is that?
Some varieties of climate resilient varieties of pulses.
You see, pulses means there are, say, PGNP, long duration PGNP variety, say 150 days it takes. Then you have a short duration pulses in 60 days, as I say, moong. In between, you have chickpea, you have green black gram, then you have groundnut is also called food legumes. So, I mean, directly it is globally, it is called food legumes. Legumes means that also can be chewed. So, our basically lentil, green gram, black gram, and PGNP. So wherever, I mean, there are 2 kinds of situation in residual moisture situation after harvest of paddy. So in UP and eastern region, lot of lentils are grown, that is musoor, just simply broadcasting the seed as a relay crop. Even in Bihar also, that kind of relay crops, lentils are grown. Lathairas are grown. Lathairas is also a pulse, but because of the toxin, people got scared about it. But now IRI is having, I mean, toxin-free Lathairas varieties. So green gram, black gram, and your lentil, these are the crops, short duration pulses for residual moisture, at least for the half of India, right from your UP to eastern India up to Assam. And similarly, PGNP, long duration pulses for Karnataka, Maharashtra, Gujarat, and maybe to your Haryana, Punjab also, where you can afford to have the land, or if sometimes it is also put on paddy barn, paddy field in Karnataka, they call barn PGNP. What happens? That will be a perennial. So that will be, once you put the PGNP, barn PGNP in rice barn, it will continue for 2 years or 2.5 years, 3 years, and every year you will get, I mean, few kilo from each plant.
Okay, sir.
So this is barn PGNP for perennial. So I have annual PGNP, 150 days, barn PGNP for 3 years, 2.5 to 3 years, which is extensively grown in Tamil Nadu area, particularly Bhavani Sagar, Vrindachalam, those areas. And there is beauty in that. All leaves fall on the paddy field that add organic carbon. And from each plant, there will be 500 gram pods annually you get. So if you have 1,000 plants, you can imagine you will be having sizable dal for your daily use. And those things also can be introduced, particularly in Assam, Meghalaya, Manipur, where perennial that PGNP you can maintain in paddy barns.
Thank you. So one student is asking that, sir, should we sell cluster bean now or we should store it for some time for more profits? What's your suggestion?
Cluster bean.
Yes, sir.
Actually, I do not have much knowledge about cluster bean. What it is? It is guar seed, or what is cluster bean? Guar.
Yes, sir.
Okay, because in Northeast cluster bean, truly speaking, I didn't work much on cluster bean, but as a vegetable, we have tested while living in Gujarat. And I am told that their value is not for as a vegetable, but the value for extracting certain rare chemicals probably out of that. And earlier, farmers used to grow and export totally. So guar gum cultivation has also come down. It's probably for gum purpose. And so I'm a bit confused with the guar gum and the cluster bean, probably the same. And not having much knowledge about the cluster bean marketing particularly.
Okay, sir. So one student from Himachal, he wants to know about that in Himachal there are very steep areas over there, steep slopes are there. So what happened that our fertile soil erodes away with the high rainfall. So what are the different ways by which we can minimize this problem or by which we can make our land fertile in hilly areas?
Hilly area, actually, to my knowledge, because I worked in Northeast, say in terraces. So, and of course, the hilly areas will be topographically the same, the lower terrace, upper terrace, higher altitude, mid altitude, low altitude. So, what we have seen in the lower altitude, actually, rice is grown, major crop, and where water stagnation is there. So, and more you climbs in the terrace, so in the upper terrace, even there is a high rainfall, you can drain out those waters because it's a slopey land. And I do not have much working knowledge with your, northwestern Himalayan region terraces, particularly in Jammu Kashmir and in other, Chandigarh or Solan and in that area. But I worked in Meghalaya, Manipur, in those areas, particularly Bara, Shillong. So there are different levels of height at the terraces at different levels, different crops are grown. Even we have seen rice, maize as an intercrop, rice, groundnut is an intercrop, and water stagnation would be only at the basement, lower terrace, where of course rice is grown as a sole crop, and after that there are rice bean, small legume crops, rice bean, sometimes grown as a cattle field and also as a dal they use it. And what are the crops? And particularly some kind of root crops are grown.
So particularly some kind of crops, perennial crops, by
yeah,
adopting
tapioca and all those things also can be grown, perennial crops.
In between, we can grow the legume crops like Shreya, we can go for this contour planting system in case of hilly areas. And in between those crops, we can grow some legume crops also. So,
yeah, that is they are growing. Legume,
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. These are the only queries.
Okay. Sorry for the trouble because I am on travel.
It's okay, sir. It's okay.
You can imagine I am sitting in a hotel room. My laptop is spoiled, so I am just placed order to buy that one, and that's why I'm not able to load the slides.
It's okay, sir. We came to after starting the session.
And anyway, I will love to interact with the student, even not happening Krishi Manthan, but for any special lecture, 1 hour webinar I can do for the students, MSc and undergraduate, any students, or any specific topics, particularly a researchable issue.
Yes.
And it is sharing knowledge and learning also, for my learning also.
So one important question also, forgot to ask that question. That one student is asking about that. So day by day we are going to use hybrid seeds, and we are just original pure seeds is getting replaced by using hybrid seeds. So what are your opinions about this?
Very nice
important
question and intelligent question.
Yes.
Tell my friend that earlier hybrids are not there. hybrid came because of the private companies came.
Yes, sir.
And they wanted to make money overnight. If variety, see 1 kilo is costing 60 rupees, hybrid they will be selling at 600 rupees. And particularly hybrids are there in rice, hybrids are there in sorghum, pearl millet, but no hybrids are there for high volume crops. Say for example, groundnut. You will not find hybrid. In wheat, there will be no hybrid because private companies, they are interested for certain crops where you have to buy every year hybrid seed from them. But what I'm telling, our country has not got self-reliant in food. Earlier, we were in a begging bowl. In the year 60s, 50s, when we were students, we used to wait for the Russian ship to come along with the wheat so that we get our chapati. Now situations are altogether different. We are flooding with food grains. It is rotting literally. And those revolutions have not come from hybrid alone. Maybe a part of hybrid, but we have very high yielding varieties. If it is properly managed, balanced fertilizer, I'm not taking give high, but balanced fertilizer, balanced nutrients, balanced pest management, it will give yield as good as your hybrid. Now one example I'm trying to give my students, say China is 80% area under rice is hybrid rice. Vietnam is same, Philippines is same. But India, we are having hardly 10%. I mean, it is much less than 10%. It is 4, 5 or 6% is under hybrid rice. And our granaries are full. The reason being, we have 300, 400 rice varieties. And that too, a variety recommended for a particular zone, not even particular state. Punjab might be having, say, 20 or 25 ecological agroclimatic zones. For each agroclimatic zones, we have having very dynamic varieties because Government of India invested money for such kind of development. And it is true for all crops mostly. Talk about maize, we have a variety, say, for Bihar. We have a variety for Punjab, we have a variety for Karnataka, different varieties for different agroclimatic regions. And those varieties are as par potential with the hybrids, provided they are agronomically managed, I mean, most superiorly. It is not that I will not give fertilizer, pesticides. I mean, I have no means to give those kind of inputs, then of course it's. Otherwise, there is no point that we must go for hybrids. Our varieties are equally efficient. Yes, there are 1 or 2 points where hybrids are there. There are eminent benefits. There we can grow. Suppose country is now importing edible oil of 7,300 crores annually, simply edible oil. And our rice, I mean, your mustard hybrids can give 4 to 5 ton yield against 1 ton, 1.5 ton. So just to stop import, we can have our own hybrid, what we have developed, and make India self-reliant in edible oil. But at the same time, we are having mustard variety which are giving 2 ton yield, 2.5 ton yield at a, I mean, maybe lower duration than the hybrids. Hybrids will be little longer duration. Another relation is more the yield, higher the duration. Means if your crop is, if you put keeping 150 days, you will be might be getting 4 ton. But if the same variety you are harvesting in 100 days, you will be getting 1.5 ton. I mean, you can imagine. So per day production, per day productivity, if you calculate, keeping a plant for 150 days, I'm again coming in small example, groundnut. In US, groundnut is kept in the field for 150 days. And their yield is, minimum yield is 4 ton per hectare. And our groundnut is harvested in Gujarat in 100 days. And we get 2 ton per hectare. Now, if you, and you see, maintaining that crop, no, how much fertilizer, how much pesticides they have been using. And for 100 days crop, how much we are using. So literally, if you look to the cost benefit ratio, and particularly per day productivity, per unit area, it will almost comparable. So this kind of thing.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
And hybrid, yeah, hybrid in cotton hybrid, yeah, it has paid dividend, particularly when we have incorporated BT in cotton against the pink bollworm, because it was a deadly disease. causing farmers to lose money. And that, of course, created, and hybrid cotton yield is, maybe 5 times more than the desi cotton in Ganganagar, Bikaner area, which they are still growing. So there are 1 or 2 points where hybrid can go.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Now
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Tell me.
So now queries are over. Now I am
Okay.
going to, on behalf of my colleagues and entire attendees and organizer also of this webinar, are very thankful to you, sir, for enriching our knowledge on sustainability. And also thankful for imparting your knowledge to their queries, to our queries. And thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for this valuable lecture.
I am not very happy, disturbed because of this kind of thing happened. No, I did not have slide. I didn't have proper connectivity, and in hotel some Wi-Fi also went out for some time. But you give me a 1 hour time with your students, so that I can, when I go back to my native place, I'm presently staying in Calcutta, and I can have at least 1 hour and compensate your whatever mishap happened.
It's okay, sir. No problem.
Shortcomings, yeah.
All attendees are saying that it's said no problem. It was a very wonderful session, and
Okay.
Thanks for your knowledge.
Thank you.
Imparting
Thank you so much, Sharma. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. চলো না 2 ঘন্টার মাঝখানে কেটে গেল অনেক খানা। 12টা 12:30 হয়েছে, 1.5 ঘন্টা হয়েছে, সব মিলিয়ে 1.5 ঘন্টা হয়েছে। ভাই না গো, এরা আমাদের অনেক উপকার করে।